What's up, Claudia?
Hey, Mikey, how are you?
Good, good. Yeah, I like that little intro.
Yes, I love it. I was like vibing with it.
Just to get the people going,
That's right.
we're all in the wedding industry, so gotta get the
Yes,
mood going.
that's right. That's right. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you so much for hopping on. How was your weekend?
Happy to. Happy to. Good, good. Busy. Back in, you know, wedding planning stuff. The not so glamorous stuff.
Right,
But very important.
the hustle and bustle.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. But it was
Nice.
great. Yeah, it was really good.
Awesome,
Nice.
awesome. Well, let me introduce you guys to Claudia Terrazas, who is an amazing wedding planner. I've
Oh,
worked with her several times, over the years, and she goes above and beyond for her clients. So, for my YouTube channel, we are going live here, but I always like to invite other vendors that are involved in the wedding industry because I think it gives us a unique perspective, not just about photography, but also like wedding planning. Eventually I'll add more guests like the DJs and stuff like that. But
yeah,
today is really all about wedding planning and
that's right.
how that can help you as maybe you're a potential bride and groom trying to plan a wedding. So before we get into the details, let me have Claudia introduce herself really quick to you guys.
Thank you, Mikey, and thank you for the intro. And it's always a pleasure working with you. It's just a day with you is like the best day, in my opinion. So
Awesome.
thank you. Yes, my name is Claudia Terrazas, and I'm a wedding and event planner here in Southern California. We do all sorts of wedding planning and special life celebrations. I have been in the wedding industry for 8 years, but with Time with Terrazas 4. We grew through the pandemic, as challenging as that was for everyone, but we're happy to make it through and be full time. So, yeah, we're really excited for the next chapter and where things are going to go in the future.
Awesome. Awesome. So
Yeah.
how long have you been a planner now?
Well, it's so funny because when people ask me, I'd be like, gosh, I've been planning since I was 15 when I
Mhm.
did my quinceañera, my 15th birthday party with my mom. And that's when I fell in love with it. But more on the professional side, it started in 2015, which is kind of funny. So 2015 is when I joined into the wedding industry professionally. But prior to, I had always been my family and friends go-to planner for all of the things. So, but yeah, professionally started in 2015.
Awesome. So tell us, the biggest difference I think when planning like, maybe a corporate event or even just like a small company event compared to like a wedding. Like what's the biggest difference in your opinion?
Absolutely. In my opinion, it is all about the emotion and feel that really sets the two apart. There is much more details that goes into a wedding celebration because we're celebrating love. So when you're at a corporate event, you're not celebrating love, you're celebrating something completely different. And so it's not as personal. I would say it's a little bit more structured in the way that it's not as a creative, although I don't want to speak on all companies or corporates in that way, because there are a lot of corporates that do things in a fun, playful
Mhm.
manner. So that that doesn't go unnoticed. But in regards to just some of the basics, it's just basically maybe a presentation, food, maybe some cocktails. There might be some music, and then that's a wrap. Whereas a wedding is very much more in depth, much more details involved.
Yeah, good perspective on that because I think a lot of people may not understand like how detailed, like you said, a wedding is, right? There's a lot of moving parts
Yeah.
and, different things that's gonna change and happen, sometimes multiple venues, right?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes. Absolutely. Multiple places throughout the day. That's right. Yeah.
Have you been to a wedding where you had like 3 or 4 venues at the same on the same day?
Yes, actually, yes. Let me break it down. So one was we started at the hotel.
Hmm.
We went to the first location for photos. Then we went to another location for photos. Then we went to another location for photos, and then we ended up at the venue. So I would say five would be the.
Oh my, what's the farthest like? Because I'm always wonder how far like some people are willing to go. Like like let's say they're getting married in LA, like for the
Uh-huh.
ceremony, and then they're gonna go to like San Diego for like the actual reception. Like, have you ever done that before? Like driving that far?
No, not
Okay.
that far. The max has been about an hour
Okay.
between the like where the ceremony is being held at
Yeah.
to where the reception is being held at. An hour has been the max, but I would I would definitely strongly suggest an hour would be the absolute top. So you don't want to go more than that.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Like, I mean, it's
Yeah,
already a long day, and
yeah.
driving on top of that just gives you it's just more stress, right?
Absolutely. And you don't want to be rushing to get to the next place. And of course here, because we are so fortunate to be here in Southern California, there is going to be traffic, and the traffic is pretty heavy.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, especially if you're trying to plan a wedding in LA. Like we all know because we live here in Southern California, and traffic can be good 5 minutes,
Right.
5 minutes, and the next thing you know, you have an accident and just like
Right.
dead stop. You're like at
Yep.
5 miles per hour.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And yeah, moving, 100 plus people from point A to point B is going to take some time. But yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Well,
Yeah,
let's get into some really specific questions for you because I
absolutely.
really wanna pick your brain and
Yes.
your knowledge. So, so for couples that are, let's say, they just get engaged, right? And now they're kind of in the process of, thinking about, having a wedding.
Yes.
Um, like even from there, right? What would you recommend would be the next step? Should they start like looking at venues? Should they start looking at the wedding date? Like what's the first step when they have that initial thought, you know what, we're gonna get married. We're kind of in the beginning stages of the
Yeah, great
planning a
question.
wedding. Yeah.
Great question. So first of all, definitely celebrate your newly engagement. I highly, highly recommend soaking that all in, because you just literally went from boyfriend to girlfriend, and then the next minute you are fiancés. It's a whole new title. So enjoy that. And then I would say there's three things to take into consideration first when planning. So definitely have a conversation with your partner and what's important to you both, to figure out what the guest count is really going to look like. Are we thinking 200 inviting everybody, or are we thinking more intimate and wanting to have a select few? Also have conversations with any parents or extended relatives that are going to be either helping out financially or will be planning in the planning process. I think those conversations early on, especially now that you have become each other's fiancés, you want to have those conversations to see, hey, we are going to have some input, because there's going to be some financial support in that area. But maybe you're like, we are going to manage it on our own and not have that. So having that conversation, I think, is super, super important. And then once you've had that, you kind of have an outline as to what things are important to you. And then I would go into the next step, which I said three, but I'm going to do four. Is to one, really hone in and focus onto what's important to you and your partner. So sometimes it's about guest experience, sometimes it's about design, sometimes it's about entertainment. It could
Hmm.
be different for every couple. Definitely having those things aligned will definitely help provide you with much more of an understanding and a vision. You don't have to have everything figured out. By no means. I don't expect anyone to have everything figured out, but just to have those conversations, I highly recommend, because that will then be like, okay, we do want to focus of our budget to go towards entertainment and food, or we want to focus our budget more towards design and overall guest experience. So there's a lot of different factors. And then, of course, definitely reach out to a wedding planner or wedding coordinator sooner rather than later. The reason why is because each person and each wedding planner, there's so many to choose from, so many different people with different perspectives and takes and personalities and experiences, that will help you, guide you through that process, including venue searching. So that way you can narrow down, literally save weekends, save time of the two of you hanging out together. So that way you can have somebody on board to bring those conversations to life.
Awesome. Awesome. So let's say, they're trying to plan a wedding a year out, right? Maybe like 12 months out. So is that enough time usually to plan a wedding, or do you need more time?
It's going to vary by county, to be honest. It's going to vary based off of the aesthetic that you are hoping to go for. Because people do book in sometimes 18 months out just to lock in their date. Now, seasons are another thing to take into consideration because, of course, as we all know, springtime is predominantly weddings, and then the fall is also predominantly weddings. So those two seasons are really, really going to be booked really early. So if you were thinking on doing something maybe on an off season, like maybe summer, or maybe a winter, here in Southern California, we're really fortunate. So it feels like it's like summer all the time or spring all the time because we have nice weather, but that may not be the case for everyone else. But then I would then suggest that if you are planning around that 12-month mark, to be open to maybe having your wedding day on an other day other than Saturday. So maybe having a Friday wedding or having a Sunday wedding, or maybe you want to be completely different and do it during the week. Whatever works for you. But definitely be open to that, just because sometimes dates are booked up.
Yeah, that's good advice, because I think, if you really want to get married at like a very popular wedding venue, they're probably going to be booked out like 12 months in advance, right? And so
Yes.
it may be very difficult to get the date that you want. So, and especially like the last few years since COVID, I've experienced photographing a lot of weddings on a Friday or a Sunday. And I think
Yep.
that's one of the misconceptions too. And of like weddings, like, oh, do you have to get married on a Saturday?
Right.
Like, what's your thoughts on that? Like, because a lot of people, when I tell like some of my friends, yeah, I'm photographing a wedding on like a Wednesday. They're like,
Yeah.
what? A Wednesday? Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure you've done some like on
Yeah.
weekdays
We
too,
have,
right? Yeah.
absolutely. So there's a lot of benefits to having a wedding that is not on a Saturday. So one is that you would get some better rates, to be honest. There are just better rates on a weekday versus the weekend, and every venue varies. So definitely reach out to them or ask those questions to see what those rates look like. And then two, your vendors are most likely, I don't want to speak for all, but are most likely available, because the weekends are jammed packed with weddings. So if you are looking to work, with Mikey, for example, he might be available on a Wednesday, and maybe that may work better for you. It just depends. And then the other thing to take into consideration is if you are open to having a weekday wedding, then that's just communicating that with plenty of time for your guest, because most often people are working, but they can, ask for the day off and be happy to join. So definitely, I think having a weekday wedding is a great alternative, and it's also a great way to have um, a more budget friendly, if you will, and get maybe some of those locked in vendors that you really, really, really want to work with.
Let me ask you a really important question,
Of
because
course.
on the weekday weddings, so because in like why people get married on a Saturday, in my opinion, is because it's a weekend, right? Most people have that day off. So
Right.
if you get married on a weekday, most of their family and friends are probably working. What's your thoughts on that? Because that may be like an issue for a lot of the guests, right?
Correct. So my personal thoughts on this is it's just all about communication. It's all about communication with your guest and your family. If you are planning this a year in advance, I mean, pretty sure they could make that accommodation with their work schedules, to go ahead and make those arrangements, if need be. Um, if if the wedding family that is, getting married and it's out of state, that might be a little bit more trickier, because of course there's flights involved, you know it's a little bit more moving parts. But as long as they are informed and educated about the plans in advance, then they can make their accommodations. Now, of course, every family is a little bit different. So some are probably going to be like, oh, there's no way I could get it. But sometimes people who work in the service industry,
Right.
sometimes their days off are on the weekday, so it might just work out beneficial for them. So it just really depends, but I would say the key thing is communication, and as soon as you lock in that date, tell your friends and family right away.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great tips. So my next question is, when you're considering hiring a wedding planner, does the size of the wedding matter? For example, let's say micro weddings, right? You know,
Yes.
like it's much smaller. Should they
Yes.
still consider hiring a wedding planner?
Absolutely, yes. Believe it or not, we here at Time with Terrazas, we did a wedding who had 8 people in it,
Hmm.
and they had myself as a wedding planner. So the reason why I say yes is because it allows for those family members who are participating to truly be in the moment and witness the love that's being celebrated. It's really, really important because, as we all know, weddings are very emotional, and there's a lot of different feelings that come with it. There's like, you get the butterflies and you feel all these nerves, but you're excited. There's so many things that are involved. So it doesn't matter the size, it just is more about enjoying the moment and having that amazing guest experience for your family and close friends. So, yeah, even if it's literally 10 people, I still recommend to have an outsider who's not your friend, who's not your mom, who's not somebody who's going to be running around, moving things around. Allow someone else who's an outsider, so that way the wedding planner can be present and be the communicator between all the vendors that are involved. Because let's face it, I,
Mhm.
I I believe, like, there is still as much work that happens in a micro wedding that there is in a big wedding. However, we want to give the best guest experience, and we want to give the bride and groom or the couple the best um, feeling. You'll be able to see it on their faces, and you'll be able to feel it when you're all together, when there's somebody who is non-related
Mhm.
running around. Don't make mom run around in her dress. That's not cool.
Yeah, I see that all the time sometimes,
Yeah.
and it's like, man, I wish they hired a planner to just take care of those issues, you know?
Yes. Yes.
So let's kind of move on to the benefits of why they should consider hiring a wedding planner. Because I think you kind of mentioned some earlier, for
Mhm.
example, like just, reducing stress for the couple, the
Mhm.
family. What's some of the other benefits you think that is important when you hire a planner?
Yeah, absolutely. So another benefit is that we know that most couples are working full-time jobs. They are busy professionals. They
Hmm.
are out there working. They're probably working more than 40 hours a week. Who knows, depending on what their career path is. So one of the huge components is communication through email, through phone calls, through researching, through connecting, through vendor referrals, vendor contracts, invoices, all of those behind the scenes things that happen. And it's very beneficial to have somebody who you and your partner don't
Hmm.
have to necessarily work on all those nitty gritty stuff. By having a wedding planner definitely allows you to take care of that workload, because let's face it, by the time you get home, you don't want to have to navigate through, pages of contracts and, pages of emails. You want to kind of tend to unwind and just kind of be like, okay, let's make some decisions and basically take it from there. So that's one of the benefits.
Right.
Another benefit is that you would be um, very moving forward in a confident manner
Mm.
together. There is no um, question as to what the roles are, because you feel confident in knowing that you have hired a planner who is experienced, who is knowledgeable, who's done this many times before. We haven't been married many times, however we've married other couples many times, and this is the first time you are, as a couple, are experiencing it. So definitely that is a huge benefit. And although not to give any less credit to couples who decide to do some of the legwork on their
Hmm.
own, it's still very important to have a wedding planner, wedding coordinator to come in at least, and making sure that everything is running smoothly. And that way, if you have any questions or things that you need to run by or things that you didn't think about, that's another benefit too, is
Right.
asking what questions do you ask? Like,
Hmm.
where do we even start? Like, what is a COI? Like, what do I need wedding insurance? Like, what does all this language mean? Because it's basically new terminology for couples as well. They're like, I've never heard this before.
Yeah, yeah. Can you explain what COI is?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
it's a certified. Oh my gosh, now I'm put on the spot.
Certificate of insurance that's what it is.
Certificate of insurance. Yes, yeah, my yes, but yes, certificate of insurance, and that's really important, because when you are working with professionals in the wedding industry, it is always, most often, all venues require vendors to have, and it's one of the moving
Hmm.
parts that a wedding planner can assist and help with. That's another benefit. You don't have to worry about collecting 10 insurances by each person and making sure that their certificate holder is put properly in the information that's being given.
Right.
Let the planner take care of that. You don't got to worry about it. He or she is taking care of it. So that's a big benefit, and that can be very time consuming. But yeah, those are important things that planners can really help with, all those nitty gritty details. All you got
Yeah.
to do is sign the check.
Well, that's what you get paid for, right? Your
That's right.
expertise and knowledge. And I think that's one of the biggest things, right? I think, in my opinion, in
Yes.
regards to hiring a wedding planner, is because most of the time it's your first time getting married. So you don't have a lot of knowledge of how to plan something like this. Like, maybe,
Yeah.
maybe you've planned like parties and other events, but I mean, it's different for a
Very
wedding day,
different.
right?
Yes.
Especially, I think, like you pointed it out, is like the vendor management. Like, there's so many things that are just happening that if it was a couple managing it, it's like I don't even know where to start. It's just so much stuff to handle, and the pressure, the stress, right?
That's right. On average, a wedding planner is working with 12 plus vendors. So that's over a dozen people managing and communicating and talking with, on top of the wedding party and the family members that are involved. So, there's a lot of people that, it can feel very overwhelming very quickly. But if you know that you've got the right person in your corner, then you will feel a lot more confident moving forward, because it's just one of those benefits of having somebody to help you with all these moving parts.
Right, exactly. So let's talk about wedding vendors,
Yeah,
because that's one of the, like, I think really important topics I want to touch base on, because
absolutely.
a lot of people that get married, I think they have a lot of trouble finding the right vendors, right?
Mhm.
And
Yes.
so that takes a lot of work, a lot of research, and a lot of people that work, 5 days a week may not have the time. So kind of explain to us, Claudia, like, when you hire a wedding planner, how can you help them, like, find the vendors, and what steps you already have in place to help them with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So finding wedding vendors is really fun and exhilarating. I will be honest, because at least with myself, and most planners, I would say, really would be able to provide you with quality options.
Hmm.
Um, because they have built relationships with these vendors. I can't express how important that vendor relationships really, really goes a long, long way. And of course, vendor referrals as well. That's another thing. But vendors specifically, once they've worked with somebody and they know and they and they worked and they vibed really well and they connected and they accomplished it together really well, they feel a lot more comfortable moving forward and working with that vendor because they had a great experience. And so they're able to share those experiences with couples. So that is one way that I believe is just super, super beneficial with wedding planners, providing couples with great vendor options. So they've built those relationships. Another thing, too, is with wedding vendors, I definitely do not want to discredit all the newbies, because we
Hmm.
all got to start somewhere. That is for sure. But
Right.
you really have to have a conversation with each other as the couple, as to, do we want to give somebody a chance, or do we want to give it a shot? Is it worth it? Or should we invest into someone who we feel
Hmm.
confident and we feel good about it, and we're willing to invest more because we already know what the outcome is going to be. We read the reviews, they have the experience, the X amount of years, all the things they're very well rounded in the industry and in their profession. So, it's one of those things that believe a couple has to have that conversation. But with going back to the vendors, having vendors being selected is super, super important in regards to the three following things. So,
Hmm.
one, I can't stress this enough. Personality is so important. It just is. It just is. And I will be saying that until I can no longer speak anymore. Like, I can't express that enough, because we all have different personalities. Everyone has their own take. Everyone has their own vibe. Everyone has their own interests. And you want to align with people who you feel comfortable with. You don't want to be with somebody who, maybe, I'm just using this as an example. So no offense to anyone if they speak in this way, but maybe they may have a sailor mouth. Maybe they have some, words that are very colorful, and maybe you're like not okay with that, but maybe you're
Hmm.
like, hey, this person is really approachable, professional, friendly. We have a great time. We can strike up a conversation um, and you talk about whatever it is that you're interested in together. So I can't express enough how important personalities are, because at the end of the day, the wedding day is going to be about the couple, and it should be an expression of your love, and it should be surrounded by other like-minded people to bring that together. And so I think the only way is by matching up all those personalities together.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that advice, right? Because
Yeah.
especially for a wedding, you want people that you can hang out with, for most of the day, and you want people that match your vision and vibe and all that good stuff, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because you don't want someone that's like totally opposite to what your personality is,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
then it just doesn't fit, right?
Right.
So yeah. I mean, there's so many things we can talk about
Yeah.
regarding wedding vendors, but
Yes.
but I think as a wedding planner like yourself, you have such an extensive network
Mm-hmm.
that it helps save time, right, for the couple.
100%.
Yeah.
By and that leads right into my second part of the vendor process or selection is budget.
Mhm.
So I would say that would be the next thing when it comes to a wedding vendor, because of course, once we've matched up personalities, we also want to make sure that this is something that is within your budget and within the vendor's either product or service, whatever it is that they are doing. So that's a huge component. And luckily, here in Southern California, we have so many options in all the categories. So there is literally somebody for everybody. And so, one of the things that a wedding planner is able to do is kind of sift through those vendors. And one of those things can be through budget. And so, it's like, okay, great. We know that person is on the higher end. Let's maybe not reach out to them. Let's maybe reach out to someone else who's a little bit more mid-range, and that might be more with the couple's ideal plan. Budget is, I mean, everyone has a budget, and everyone can, like, it's different for each one. I don't want to say any numbers because it changes all the time, and it's very different for each vendor. But I think that is just another component for sure.
Awesome. Let's transition a little bit
Yeah.
into an interesting topic.
Yeah.
Some misconceptions, I think. And I actually I went on
Yeah.
weddingwire.com, and I pulled up an old blog about like 11 wedding misconceptions. It's kind
Okay.
of old. It's in 2017, but
Okay.
let's talk about this really quick.
Yeah. I'm curious.
So the bride has to wear a white wedding dress. So in that blog, it states that traditionally the bride has worn a white gown for her walk down the aisle,
Mhm.
but designers are pushing the boundaries of, like, unique looks for different brides, like from crop tops to pantsuits, to different styles. I think I've had some brides wear black.
Mhm.
So what's your thoughts on that?
I say it's your wedding day. You do you. I say that it goes back to that conversation with the couple as to what type of vision you're trying to accomplish. Now, there's a lot of theme weddings. So with the black, I mean, I think that one goes definitely for a very themed wedding. But it's going to be whatever makes you feel comfortable. Not necessarily everyone has to wear white. I know there are alternatives such as
Mm.
champagne, ivory, cream. White honestly comes in so many different types of shades and different types of fabrics. So that can change as well.
Right.
But yeah, I believe that it's really up to the person who feels confident. I say whatever makes you feel confident, makes you feel good, then by all means go for it, and also take into consideration the theme of the wedding.
Right, absolutely. Here's another interesting one.
Yeah.
You have to serve cake for dessert. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh gosh, no. I mean, my thought is, my initial thought is no, that's not the only option for dessert. Let me clarify. So yes, no, it by all means. Oh my gosh, sometimes people don't even like cake. No offense to all the bakers out there, but I mean, it's something that's very optional. So dessert is a variation of all different types of desserts. So, there is so many options to choose for. And to be quite frank, most guests actually will enjoy a dessert table over cake just because they love the variety. They
Hmm.
love having options to choose. Oh, let me try this flavor, this lemon cupcake. Oh, let me try this, brownie or
Right.
whatever. Oh, donuts? What? Red velvet? Like what? Yes,
Oh
please.
yeah.
So no, you do not have to just serve cake.
Yeah, that's one thing that I think a lot of couples still think they have to do, right? Is like, oh, you
Mhm.
have to have the cake, for everybody to eat. But yeah, like you said, there's so many options now. It's really
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah, absolutely.
Here's another one. The father is the only one who can walk the bride down the aisle.
Yeah, this one pulls on my heartstrings, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because gosh, without getting too emotional,
Yeah.
um no, the father is not the only one that can walk down the bride.
Right.
It can be a mother, it can be a grandma, it can be a grandpa, it can be an uncle, it can be your brother, it can be your best friend, it can be
Right. Right.
anybody who you align with. So, and some couples are fortunate to still have their parents. Some couples are not, unfortunately. So there's different reasons. Of course, family dynamics is a whole nother conversation. But for this sake, no, the father is not the only one who can walk down the aisle.
Yeah, I think that's again, I think sometimes just that's why I'm saying like a lot of couples that maybe not even have attended many weddings
Hmm.
and have only seen like the most traditional weddings, right? And that's
Yeah,
what most people think. But
right.
like you said, like you can do whatever you want.
Hmm.
And so let me share this other one here. Let me just
Yeah,
pull it up because I think this is another important
this is
one that
quite interesting.
yeah, yeah. And this is straight from the blog from Wedding Wire. So
Yeah,
here's one that I think has been changing over the years.
yeah.
Here we go. All right. How about you have to have an even number of bridesmaids and groomsmen, but let me put a twist to this. What's also your thoughts on like, even naming the party the bridal party? Because I've seen where some of the bridesmaids actually are on the other side.
Mhm.
Like what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for this one, absolutely no. Again, it does not have to have an even number. If aesthetics is important to you, then maybe you would want to have an even balance on each side. But definitely would suggest reframing bridesmaids or groomsmen and just saying wedding party, because that's 100% the case. Sometimes on you know um, the groom side, they'll want to have you know females on that side
Right.
as well, and
Mhm.
vice versa. It just depends on how they identify themselves. But I would say definitely wedding party, or your crew.
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever works for you.
Yep,
Your
exactly.
people, like, it doesn't have to be categorized in this way.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah, and I'll give you guys a good example. I had one wedding where it was 2 groomsmen, and I
Mhm.
believe it was 8 bridesmaids.
Wow.
And so, I mean, that's the most odd number you can think of,
Mhm.
and then during the ceremony, the cool thing was that the groomsmen would have to they walked back to grab the other bridesmaid, which was really awesome because it worked out, right? Because
Mhm.
the one groomsman comes down the aisle, it's like a full circle, which is kinda
Yeah,
cool.
I love that.
Yeah, but yeah,
Very
here's another one. Um, dancing is the only form of reception entertainment.
Oh, interesting.
So based off the blog, it was just stating that, like, depending on your venue, it's kind of limited. So let me ask you, like, what other forms of entertainment are there, right?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, there is so much other ways of entertaining your guests if they are not, up and getting on the dance floor and
Hmm.
dropping it low. Like maybe they want to be entertained by comedians,
Yeah.
by performers. Oh my gosh,
Yes.
we had a
Yeah.
wedding, yeah, where they had Polynesian dancers with
Oh.
fire and like cool throwing things around, and it was phenomenal. So yes, so I would definitely say that there are other types of forms to entertain your guests. Definitely having maybe you're communicating with your MC and DJ and
Hmm.
having games to interact. Oh my gosh, having games at a wedding, let me tell you, it's a game changer. Like no one's even thinking about, dancing. They're like literally in competitive mode, ready to play a game, whatever it is. I have seen some really cool things like where the DJ or MC is announcing, one person from each table and then they have to grab certain items. And let me tell you, your guests are having a blast. They are just having so much fun. It was like literally the best thing ever. I'm very, very entertained. So yes, there are other forms of entertainment to look into.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially if you're in the Hispanic community, you can invite a banda, right?
Yes.
Mariachi.
Yes.
I've
Yes.
had one wedding. I think they invited like a violinist.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, like, you can do whatever you want, like, in because
Absolutely.
I think that's the biggest hurdle, I think, with some weddings. It's like, you're inviting a wide range of people, right? You
Hmm.
have a lot of, like, I wouldn't say they're old, but, your
Right.
grandpa,
Yeah,
grandpa,
you have a mature crowd.
mature
Absolutely.
crowd, and then but then, excuse me, but the couple's very young, so maybe they
Right.
have also their friends, so they're
Yes.
like, maybe their friends love dancing, but then the older crowd is not as, like, into dancing. So it's like
Right.
it's like you're trying to balance that. But I think
Absolutely.
the best weddings I've been to, I think in my opinion, are excuse me,
Hmm.
where's my water?
Get some water.
I'm good, but I think the best weddings I've been to is when there's like a combination of
Yes.
entertainment, right?
Yes.
When there's
Agree.
like some events that are geared to both,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Like a singer, like a singer, and then there's like performances, which is
Mhm.
amazing. Or
Yeah.
they have like another one I went to was I believe it was like a Persian wedding, and then they had belly dancer.
Yeah.
Oh
Yep.
my god, that was really
Amazing.
cool.
Really, really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, and thank you for pointing that out as well. And I would definitely recommend these things can happen simultaneously. So
Mhm.
even though maybe you do want to still provide dancing for the reception, but there's also could be a cigar lounge. There could
Oh,
be
yeah.
in a separate area maybe
Right.
where they are doing more, maybe you're wanting to do casino or some sort of things like that. I know a big popular thing is like photo booths and the 360s photo booths. So having some sort of engagement with those external things while people are still on the dance floor or
Right.
things. So yeah, I totally agree. Yep,
Awesome.
lots
Yeah.
of fun things.
Awesome. Alright, here's another one. This is not from Wedding Wire. I think I just pulled it from, like, a random blog.
Yeah.
So DIY isn't always cheaper, right? So let's kind of put that into context.
Yes, absolutely.
So so basically, I've done some weddings where they did everything themselves, right? They're searching for the vendors. They had, their family help them out, and they did at the backyard,
Yeah.
and they did everything themselves. They had no
Hmm.
help from like outside vendors to put everything together.
Hmm.
So it seems like it's like takes more time and work, and I don't think people put a value on that, on your time, right? So
Oh
that's
my
my
gosh, yes.
thought. That's my thoughts on it, and
Yes.
why I think doing yourself is not always cheaper.
That's
But
right.
I want to see your opinion on it, Claudia.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we say this with kindness, but definitely consider um on the tangible items that you will be using for your wedding day and be very realistic. So for example, sometimes I've had couples say, oh well, we bought all of our linens and we've
Right.
purchased all of, these external tangible things, and you're like, okay, fantastic. um who's gonna set that up and where is it gonna go? And then they're like, oh yeah, yeah, so there's a lot of these factors that couples may think that it is cheaper, but in the long term ends up costing them a lot of time and
Right.
a lot of energy. Again, remember, most couples are working full-time jobs. So then they're coming home and, spray painting something, and then also, then it just ends up with all these tangible things specifically at the end of the wedding day, like what are you going to do with them, and so it's not always the best option. This is where, I'm a firm believer in rentals, maybe renting it from someone
Mm-hmm.
versus purchasing it on your own. If you do want to customize things, there are vendors that customize things
Right.
for you. So you
Yeah.
don't have to go to Michael's, buy a Cricut, buy the fabric, buy,
Oh
buy
my
all the
Lord. Oh
things. You
my
don't have
God.
to do that. There's vendors I can do it for you.
Yeah. Oh my God. This seems like a lot of work, and like you're already thinking about a million things. So, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
here's another. It kind of ties into the previous question
Of
or
course.
the
Yeah.
misconception.
Yep.
I
Yep.
can save money by doing it myself with a friend or family member.
Yep.
So again, we're not discounting people that do it yourselves, right? If you're doing your own wedding, by
Right.
all means,
By all means,
yeah.
we
If you don't have the
understand.
budget,
Yeah.
we get it.
If
But
you
I
have
think,
time, yeah.
yeah, especially if you have the time, I think there are pros and cons to everything. So I think with this one, if you don't mind me chiming in on this one,
Of course.
um, I think let's say for example, like you're trying to save money, like especially with photography, because that's kind of
Yep.
my niche here.
Yes.
And I've had so many stories I've heard where they had, a family member that they hired to do it for free, and to photograph the wedding, and things went wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't capture the moment like they were expecting. So now they're like looking back at it as like, man, we should really have hired a professional vendor and stuff like that, right? So what's your thoughts when some couples do this and not really thinking about the other side of the coin?
Yes. Great question. And yeah, so unfortunately, I always hear it's always regret.
Yep.
Honestly, it's always this big conversation about, oh, we regret, we wish we would have done this. um, I I had someone recently mention that to me, and it broke my heart because
Yeah.
I was like, I could have been there to help help you, but I heard, that their event didn't run as smoothly as they had hoped
Right.
because they had hired a friend or family, or I mean, they didn't
Hmm.
hire, maybe they just had somebody helping them. So that's one of the things too that you would be getting with a wedding planner who is experienced and that is not going to be running around in their nice outfit for the wedding because they're too busy setting up for the centerpieces or etc., or doing some DIY
Right.
flowers, like, and then leaving a mess, and then guests are arriving and you're like, oh my gosh, like, I just gotta sweep this up. There's we've all heard the stories, it's just crazy. And I will also say that your guest will also see the difference between where there is a wedding planner or when
Hmm.
there is not. And
Right.
ask your guests, they will tell you, they will know automatically. They're like, oh wow, They should have
Yeah.
had a coordinator. Like, who's in charge? Or the ones that do hire a wedding planner, they're like, oh, this is great. So, yes.
Yeah, awesome advice on that
Yes.
one. I think, we really have to put everything in perspective for
Hmm.
people that are thinking about it, right?
Right.
Here's another one.
Absolutely.
Here's another one that I really believe
That was a great question.
that I think sometimes with couples, they feel like they have no control, right? If
Hmm.
I hire a wedding planner, so what's your thoughts about that, Claudia? And
Hmm.
why do you think people think like that?
Yeah, this is a really great question. So, I, from my perspective and my experience, and also chatting with other fellow wedding planners as well, is they believe that wedding planners will take control because they see them with a clipboard or in a notebook or whatever, and that they're just like pointing the finger and like
Mhm.
delegating at everybody.
Right.
But in the reality, it's quite the opposite.
Mhm.
There is a very misconception in this area because our job is to communicate what you want. It's your wedding day, it's your day.
Right.
We're there to just facilitate that. Hey, the bride would really like this, or the groom really wants this. So we are communicating that across the board with all of the vendors. And so in reality, it's not taking control of the wedding. We're just communicating
Right.
what the couple wants. And I think with couples, and even couples who consider themselves like, very on top of things, which there are, and I give it to all those couples out there. I know there's a lot of people that are very, very good organizers, but sometimes you kind of just have to let the binder go and
Right.
allow the conversation to be with a wedding planner, to then communicate with your dozen plus vendors. So
Right.
then that way you get to soak in all the love, all the vibes, all the connections that your family and friends are going to be surrounding you with. So I would love to explain, and that can be very lengthy question answer, but that's the short answer.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think with that one, I think it's just some people really feel that like because I mean, I've been on the other side where sometimes I think even the family members will feel like, oh, they're taking over, but you're really working conjunction with the vision of the couple. And so here's another interesting one because from my end, my perspective, when I photograph weddings at some venues, right? Um, I there's a coordinator, right? There's a
Mhm.
coordinator on site that
Yes,
is from the venue. So that's
yes,
different.
yes.
And sometimes what happens is like that coordinator is not there the entire time for the
Yes,
wedding coverage. They
yes.
may leave 3 hours before their wedding ends,
Hmm.
and so I'm like, "Where's the wedding coordinator or the on-site
Yeah,
coordinator?" I'm like, "Oh, did she already leave? Okay, that's fine." Because I have questions. I was like, "Oh, I didn't realize they already left." But
yeah, yeah.
so what's some of like the pros and cons when they have an on-site coordinator compared to a wedding planner that is actually going to be there the entire day
Hmm.
coordinating your wedding?
Yeah, this is a great, great question, and I see couples um not as informed, and I think as an industry we're really trying to do better to communicate the difference. So the on-site coordinator is a huge important person in the vendors. The on-site coordinator is focusing on the venue itself and whatever comes with that venue. Sometimes it's catering, sometimes it's bartending, sometimes it's rentals, whatever the case may be. Now, that person is handling the other weddings and events that are happening in that same venue. So he or she is the point of contact
Hmm.
for that physical venue space.
Got it.
Now, the outside professional planner, like myself and others in the industry, they are most often a small business who is working on their own under their own name and brand, and they are the ones who are working very, very closely with the couple, and they are working with the vendors that the couple has selected. So again, going back to the vendors, typically it's 12 plus vendors depending on
Right.
how many people you want on your team. And we are communicating and creating the timeline. We are figuring out, hey, when do we need to tell the coordinator to tell the chef, hey, we need to have dinner at 6 o'clock? How do we need to make that happen?
Right.
So the wedding planner is literally communicating with everyone, whereas the on-site coordinator is just maintaining their own roles at that venue. So that could be rentals, again, bar and
Right.
catering. So it just depends, but it's very two separate roles. And I really hope that all couples will consider hiring a wedding planner because it's a very different role from what the on-site on-site cater coordinator, will be. This is live, so
It's all good. It's all good. We're just we're keeping it raw here.
yeah. So yeah, very different roles. Very different.
Do you does every venue have an on-site coordinator in your opinion, in your experience?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Have you ever been to a venue without a coordinator?
Yes, actually. They literally show up, open the doors, and then they're gone.
Wow.
Like, what? What? We're just here? Okay. What? That has happened. Yes, that has happened. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, thank you kindly for opening up the doors for us and letting us into the building. But who's gonna be my point of contact when the restrooms need to be replenished with paper towels and toilet paper?
Right.
Who's gonna do that?
Oh my goodness.
So that was lots of fun. So keep in mind, sometimes, I mean, it's very rare these days. But in my experience, we have experienced that. It was unlock the door and walk on in and do what you want to do. Come back at the end of the night and lock it up.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I have a few more questions, but I think this is more for, like planning tips.
Yeah.
So let's talk about here. Let me pop up this tip. Well, this proposed tip in
Yeah.
terms of like, let's say you're helping a couple, right?
Yes.
Plan their wedding, and what are here? Let me type it in.
Yeah. I love all of these. This is really fun.
That's pretty cool, right?
Really fun. I love this.
Here's one. So
Yes.
I think we talked about one earlier,
Mhm.
about the wedding cake, right?
Yes.
Because I mean, if you're trying to, build a 3-tier cake, that's probably like thousands of dollars. That's very expensive
Yes.
for a cake.
Eggs
So
are not cheap these days.
yeah. So, and if you talk about like, I've seen some weddings where they had, instead of the cake, they had like the what is that tiny one? The bundt cake.
Oh, yes, the bun cake. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they had small bundt cakes for all the guests,
Oh,
and
I
then
love
they
that.
just did the cake cutting for like a tiny one. They had their little their cake topper. That was kind of
Yeah.
cool. So that's
Very
like
cool.
one way I've seen it. They kind of reduced their budget because the cake wasn't super important for their their wedding. So
Absolutely.
so what's some of the tips you can give some couples that are trying to save a little bit of money for their wedding?
Absolutely. I'm going to be super honest here. So, some ways that you can save money is by lowering your guest count.
Mm,
Guest count is a really, really um, big factor into the overall wedding expense. And the reason why is because when you do have a larger wedding, you are paying, keep in mind, per plate, per fork, per
right.
chair, and etc. So that immediately will save you money there. Now, if you do have it in the budget to have, multiple guests, more power to you. I think that's fantastic. More the merrier. Ways that you can save in those areas would be, the design element, if
Mm,
that's another area that maybe is not that important to you. Maybe you're
right.
not so focused on the design of florals. Like sometimes I think couples will, they'll see Pinterest and get shiny eye syndrome and like, everything looks so good. And then they realize, oh my gosh, that centerpiece is $500. Like, what?
Yep.
Like, that's wild. But, I think in that area, because you would need to, like, for example, if you are having, a 200-person wedding and you need to have at least a minimum of 25 tables or so to accommodate everybody, think about that's 25 centerpieces, or that's
Right.
25 flower arrangements, depending on what you're thinking of. So, if the design is somewhere where you want to save a little bit of money,
Right.
that's one of the areas. Another way that couples can save money is by hiring a wedding planner.
Yep. 100%.
Because they will be able to, connect you with people who would be more aligning your budget. And they would be able to say, hey, like, this DJ is phenomenal.
Right.
He's done a great job. We've worked well
Hmm.
together. I let's hop on a call with him or her. And that can save you tremendous amount of money. Definitely. I think another area, and I'm happy to go on to the next question, is
Sure.
um, if you are looking to save money in
Hmm.
areas, I think too, the location is also very, very important.
All right.
So I think when it comes to, and I feel like this kind of goes back to that shiny part where
Hmm.
couples get excited, is they end up spending a really large chunk on their wedding venue, and
Hmm.
then the budget is eating up a big chunk from that, and then they're
Right.
like, oh my gosh, now we have to like fit the rest of the vendors in. So, like, you can't have a wedding without a photographer. You need to have a photographer. You know what I mean? So it's like, oh, so I think that's another area, like maybe, take into consideration where your venue is going to be at, because there are a lot of great options that can be very affordable. But unless you're, going for a different route, then, up to you. But
Awesome. Great tips. Here's the last question. Oh,
yeah,
not question, but
yeah,
I guess like
tips.
yeah. So well, let me show you. So open bar versus cash bar. It's an important topic, right? Especially for
It
those
is.
that love to drink.
Oh,
So
yes.
right. So what's your opinion versus open bar versus cash bar?
Oh, wow. This is I
Because
okay.
we both have some experiences with this one.
Yes. All right.
Well,
So
let's talk about
let's talk about the open bar.
yeah, let's put it into context first, I think
Yes.
first. So let's talk about like how you can still save money with open bar versus cash bar. So what's
Yes.
your takeaway for
Okay.
that?
So definitely, if you are doing open bar, now this is gonna vary. Keep in
Mhm.
mind. So this is gonna vary by location of the venue and the service that you are providing. But sometimes venues do allow couples to bring their own alcohol.
Okay.
So, and sometimes there's a fee for it. Sometimes there isn't. They're like, okay, we're totally okay with you bringing that in.
Right.
Now, you can save money actually by doing that. It is sometimes cheaper to go down to Costco and load up a basket of all of the things that you love to drink or your guests love to drink. However, there are a lot of logistical factors that come with that. You definitely want to have somebody in charge of drop off and
Mhm.
pick up and loading in and loading out. But that is one area where you could save some money if your venue allows that.
Got it.
And so that being like an open bar. Now, if you do the open bar where the venue is, say they don't allow you to bring your own
Mm.
um, spirits and wine and beer,
Right.
um, they are providing all the alcohol for yourselves. Now, This could be very interesting because if it varies per wedding.
Right.
Sometimes there are guests that are heavy drinkers. They like to throw them back. But then there's some that are not so much. They're like, yeah, we're good with, glass of wine or two and call it a night.
Right.
So it
Right.
just really will depend on the guests that you are inviting. I think that is where it does help to figure out which direction you want to go do.
Got
So
it.
open bar
Gotcha.
versus cash bar, it's going to vary. I will say most often that when it is a cash bar, your guest, um, you know, should one be aware so that way
Hmm.
they could bring cash because that's something that they have to, they may not have or want to have the option for Venmo or Zelle or something other like that. But it is still kind of, I don't want to say expected, but kind of
Right.
it is expected to say that like the couple should consider at least hosting the like cocktail hour or something of that nature.
Right.
And then if they decide to go to cash bar, then that's fine too. So
Awesome.
yeah, hopefully that
Awesome.
provides a little bit of insight on these two topics.
Okay. So here's my last topic here.
Yeah.
So to finish it off, like, what's your most valuable tip or advice you can give to any couple that is hiring a planner, and how should they communicate with the planner in regards to their wedding?
Ooh. So definitely there okay, there's a few parts to this.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
one communication would be I would advise couples to start searching as soon as possible
Right.
for wedding and event planners. Um, Even if you're in the early process and maybe you're interested in their smallest package, which is wedding management, which is typically anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks or 4 to 8 weeks. It depends on each service provider, or I should say wedding planner. Um, but I would say that it's very important to not exclude that from your vendor list
Mm.
because it's a very important role, just like a photographer. You want to
Right.
capture all of those beautiful moments. You're going to also want somebody to orchestra all of those beautiful moments. So it
Right.
is not something that, and what I believe to be left out. And
Gotcha.
I think it's really important for couples to have the conversations with their families to say, hey, like, we really want to work with this particular planner. We think he or she is a great fit. Um, and, maybe it works out. So I say sooner rather than later. Another important information that I would suggest to couples is to make sure that they are understanding their roles in the planning process, because I know sometimes too, um, there's so many decisions that need to be
Hmm.
made, but in reality, it is their wedding. So you have to kind of make decisions. It's very important. And so I say, maybe having that conversation with the couple as to seeing what is important to them. So, for example, um, DJs, for example, the couple has to decide as to what music is going to be played. Maybe they have two different genres of music and they need to combine it or collaborate together. They have to make decisions together.
Right.
And that goes in for every vendor category that couples have to make. Now, sometimes people are like, well, especially with hair and makeup per se, like,
Hmm.
the gentlemen necessarily don't really need to worry about that or have to have those conversations, but that then falls on the bride to have that. So I definitely would suggest couples to make decisions together and have those decisions clarified as to, hey, is it important to you who I choose for a photographer, or is it important to you to who I choose for a caterer? I think
Right.
that one's another big one too, where people are like, I think that's something that they have to decide on together. So yeah, I would say that those would be my important advice, and hopefully couples will feel, much more at ease knowing that they've, selected vendors that they align with.
Awesome. Yeah, great advice. Well, thank you again so much, Claudia,
Absolutely.
for hopping on, the live today. For any couples out there that are looking for a wedding planner that is amazing, how can they connect with you, Claudia?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can connect with me on social media, or you can go to my website. Everything is at timewithterrazas.com. So, or at Time with Terrazas on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. So, yeah, all of the things. But yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mikey, for having me. It was a pleasure. These were great, great questions to have. I
Yeah,
love it.
absolutely. Yeah, so we will post all her links in the description down below. So if you want to connect with Claudia, feel free to check that out. Of course, she is also on Instagram. What is your Instagram handle again?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's at Time with Terrazas. I do have it on
Oh,
my
it's right there. Yeah,
profile line. What do they call it?
exactly.
I don't know. What's it called? The tagline?
Yeah, I guess tagline. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Hit me up there if you want to send me a DM or shoot me an email. Either way, let's connect.
Awesome, awesome. Well, all right, Claudia, thank you so much. Thank you, all of you guys, for listening and watching us blabber about wedding planning.
Yeah. Literally.
Yeah, we'll do this again, definitely. Maybe like, once a month. I definitely kind of want to touch on more specific topics. I think it'll be very
Yeah,
helpful for a lot of couples that are planning a wedding.
I agree. I'd
But
love
yeah,
to.
awesome. All right.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah,
Hey,
absolutely. Okay, Claudia, thank you so much for hopping on.
no problem. Thank you.
All right, take
Have a
care.
great day.
Bye
Bye.
bye.